All right, I'm going to repeat the question. Okay, so how has your perception of racism in America changed over your life? And has there been a significant change over the last year and a half?
Yeah, I could start off by saying my perception of racism has definitely changed throughout my life. I could start off by saying I am an immigrant. Excuse me, I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Nigeria. I came to the U.S. around 6 or 7. Since the moment I came to the U.S., I always thought that there was a discrepancy between Africans and African Americans. But just witnessing all the past shootings and the past murders and everything that's happened throughout the recent years, it's clear as day that even though we are different in some aspects, in all eyes we're Black. So my perception of racism has definitely changed. Seeing myself very much like African Americans in that sense. And in the past recent years, I haven't had any personal experiences or encounters, which I'm glad I could say. But my perception of racism has definitely changed in the last few years. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I grew up here, but when I went to school, it was like a bunch of everyone around me didn't look like me. They were either Asian or they were like white, and I was like, I thought I was in my own bubble. I was like, oh, everyone's friends, like this is great, like there's nothing going on in the world. But I think when it really hit me was when like my parents explained to me like why some people may not want me over at their house, and I was like, like that's a little interesting. And then last year I kind of saw it, kind of stemming off of what Victor said, there's also like I'm Caribbean, so but my parents, there's always like this discrepancy between like Caribbean and African Americans, and it's not fun. And I've like heard it from my parents as well, and it's like not great. And especially this year, with like all the shootings, you kind of realize that like at the end of the day, when a cop pulls you over or something like that, they're not going to ask you like, hey, like, are you African? Are you African American? No, you're Black at the end of the day. So that's all they see.
I guess I'll go next on that. I think, to answer your question, yes, my perception of racism changes every single day, honestly, because when I get more and more out into the real world and all on my own, it hits me. I mean, because growing up, I was always with my mom, and I would be the careless little kid running around, and my mom always defending me. But hey, when I'm in the store by myself, my mom's not with me. So I'm getting people staring at me left and right, and I'm like, why? Like what did I do wrong? Like everyone can see my hands. There's nothing wrong with me. And even it's the fact that, like, I'm gonna make a joke. Like my mom would dress me up to a certain age, and then now that I'm older, it's like I have to dress in a specific manner so that people give me my respect. And like I'm not asking for anyone's respect when I go to the grocery store. I just want people to mind their business. But opposed to that, they're gonna keep looking at me, and they're gonna keep looking at me if I'm dressed a certain way. They're gonna address me like a little kid, even though I might be older than them. And then Roberto says it to me all the time. It's fun and games. White peers of mine will say they have Black friends, and their parents will say that their kids have Black friends, but it changes as soon as that friend wants to come over, or when their daughter starts dating a Black boy, it's not all right in that case. So it's always like we're held to that double standard 24/7, and it could be exhausting. Could definitely be exhausting.
I definitely agree. And I feel like I've always been aware, but in these past few years, I've kind of been hyper aware. And I really relate to that exhaustion that you're mentioning. And especially that was one of the reasons that drew me to Howard, because I was kind of tired of just this idea that being Black was like a monolith, like there's only one identity to Black people. And going to Howard showed me that okay, somebody could say they're Black, there's different places that they can come from. There's not an expected way to act. But my parents, I'm a first generation American. I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi is kind of slow. I'm a first generation American, so I've kind of been told these kind of ways to act from my parents from a young age. As soon as we get into the store, make sure your hands are out of your pocket, or make sure that you always look nice, or kind of this idea of like respectability politics that I feel is extremely exhausting. Not only are just, I mean, I feel like now, especially nowadays, it's hard enough like growing up, especially with COVID and the pandemic and me being hyper aware to racism. And this just these untold rules on top while you're trying to figure everything out has been very, very exhausting. And I'm not sure if anybody else has had these experiences where people try to come to you and ask for your intake. Oh, did you hear about this shooting? Or, oh, did you hear about what happened on the news? Like, I'm tired of being, I know it sounds bad, but I'm kind of tired of talking about it. I'm kind of tired of always having to have an opinion about it. And it's draining, like you can't escape it. You go to social media to relax, you see a video of somebody senselessly being murdered, like no censoring or anything. You're seeing life being taken away right in front of you. So that has been a lot. There's been like, I don't think there's a kind of escape to it, like on the news, on social media, it's kind of everywhere. So it's been, that aspect has been really draining.
So clearly there's an overall exhaustion that very much is relatable. I think we all feel sometimes. And so there are clearly many components and issues within racism that cause that. So now what I'm wondering is, what is something in particular you would like to see changed in America in terms of racism? Like what is one of the issues, just even one of the issues that's significant to you?
I think it's properly educating people that feel like they have nothing to do with the issue. For example, there was one time where I went to a friend's graduation party, and the person wants to say that they were intoxicated, and that's their excuse. But when you call me the N-word, it's not funny. It's ridiculous, because you're not even like, there's no excuse for that. And it's like, you feel like you could freely throw around all kinds of words, and it hurts people, and they don't understand the origin or the intent. And it's like, oh, I'm drunk, give me a pass. No, like, that word shouldn't even be in your vocabulary to begin with. I mean, you know what the history is like. You learn the history. You need to understand the history. And they'll unintentionally say something extremely insulting, and they feel like, oh, well, I didn't know better. That's the problem. They say they don't know better, and they use that as their excuse. But that's why they have to be properly educated to the point when it comes to things like this.
I have a question, Divon. Your points are very good. And, but my question is from your age perspective, because being called the N-word, that has been for years and years and years. And a person as old as I am has dealt with that as well. So when you say they don't know better, they do know better. So how do you get past the point that they know better, but they do it anyway? And it is continuing to happen. I mean, it didn't stop with my age group. It didn't stop with someone else's age group, where it should have, and it is continuing. So what do we do about that as a people, regardless of what age we are? How do you feel that we can better, because I don't feel that we can make people do or say the right thing, but how do you get past that, if I'm making any sense to you?
No, you make 100%, 110%. Genuinely, that's what the issue is. I mean, even like today, we even see them passing more legislature. Even the big thing was recently there was the anti-Asian hate crimes that were passed. But we're still seeing those attacks happen. So it's really, to me, it's a very difficult issue to tackle. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, because they are trying to make efforts, or they're saying they're trying to make efforts to improve those circumstances, but there is that ignorance out there where people are like, I don't care. It's been happening for decades. So even if legislatures pass, to be honest, I don't know where we can go, and that's the scariest part about it.
Yeah, and that's what makes it the continuing hard feeling that we all share as African American people, because we're all dealing with this. Because when they say it to you, they've said it to me and all of us. You know, even though I might not have heard it, I still feel your pain because I've been there.
Absolutely.
I want to make a comment too. And so sometimes people say these things because they think it's funny or it's cool or whatever. And I've heard someone call another young man a knuckle grabber. I mean, a knuckle grabber or grounder. In other words, like you're a monkey, you know, and they think that's funny. But I think you have to call people on that and said, you know, that's not appropriate. I don't want to hear that from you. That's offensive. It offends me. And really put them on the spot about it. So, and sometimes, just as you say, they have a little alcohol in them and they think they, you know, all their inhibitions go away. So I think that in that case, I would definitely call them on that.
Yeah,
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think it's, and again, this is from a white person. I know that you guys can't see me right now, but I honestly think it's like the white person's burden to speak up and be anti-racist. And honestly, you know, and ask people like, why is that funny? That is not funny. Like, you know, you understand the history of it. We learned about it. Like, don't be ignorant to this, and continue pushing forward. Because again, like oftentimes white people only listen to things that other white people say. And that's just something that, you know, I've noticed for years. And then, you know, I'm sure that everyone else in this Zoom call has as well, which is really unfortunate. And that's also psychology too. Like you're more inclined to listen and be friends with people that look like yourself, or you know, or do things that you're more familiar with, right? So again, we have to talk to our peers and call them out and say, listen, like that's not cool. Like I know you just said that, but like, and I know that you're drinking, but honestly, like the terms that you're using, like they should have never been said. But also, like, this is 2021. Like, who are you as a person? Really reflect on that. And honestly, what I like to do is make people explain like how it's funny. I do this specifically like with men, like when they say some kind of misogynistic thing, like how is that funny? Like, why is that funny? And really make people reflect on that. And it makes them grow past it too. So I think we all really need to do our part. And again, that's probably, again, my white privilege talking, but and it's easier said than done. But I think it really is the white person's burden to really push our peers to stop being you know, this bad behavior. So
Right, and I'll also just pitch in one thing, and then of course gonna hand it back over to you guys. But in response to Mary, I think one of the I think the reason, people use social media so much now to spread the word, just to spread knowledge as much as possible, is to be able to shoot down the excuse that I didn't know, is to shoot down like the ignorance excuse. It's interesting. I'm interested to see how it turns out that has affected like the younger generations now in the future. I'll be curious to see if it actually has made a significant difference to have that information at hand all the time and to see it just when you're scrolling anywhere. That kind of gets into one of my other questions though, but I want to get back to, are there any specific issues that you guys have in mind that are just important to you and that you want to do something about, or are already doing something about?
I can answer this. Great conversation, by the way. But for me, it would be like the stereotypes of like an African American person. I think that most of the hatred that is stemmed like from races is because of the stereotypes that are like that they give African American people. And for me personally, I think how I'm changing it is simply being me, like being like a Black woman. That's how I'm gonna change it. Like kind of like doing things that like being myself, kind of like against the stereotype. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. One thing I would definitely like to see change in society in regards to Black people is just the Black on Black crime or any type of pinning against one another that I see both in social media and in real life. I feel like for a very long time now, we always have this notion where it's like, I have to be better than the next Black brother next to me. I have to outshine my Black brother, but I'm my brother's keeper. So there's really no point in me outshining that person. If anything, we should be helping each other out. Especially being a young Black man in America, I definitely see that, especially in my friends. So that's something I would like to see change. And the way I would like to change that is obviously just, being the best version of myself, being what I aspire to be, and, leaving a hand out to the younger generation.
I think one change I would like to see is just acknowledgement from the government about like structural racism and systematic racism, because we could say in our daily day-to-day encounters, oh, we're doing this to combat racism, but a lot of the things are above us, like the school to prison pipeline. That's not something that we can necessarily control. That's the government. Or gentrification, or just like, especially in one of my classes, we were talking about like social determinants of health. And when we listed different diseases, and we'd see African Americans showing up in like most of these diseases like hypertension, diabetes. And, it's quick for somebody to say, oh, well, it's just the food that they eat. But when you're thinking about like different areas in different cities, well, are they on welfare? What is their access to healthy foods? Are they in a food desert? Things like that. It's things above our control. So I feel like, just for maybe a local official or a governor saying, oh, there was a senseless crime, maybe like talking about an act of police brutality. Okay, you're acknowledging the actual event, but you need to talk about the structural racism behind it, because I feel like without that, it's going to keep perpetuating and being pushed in generation to generation. So while I feel like the work on a day-to-day is important, I really truly believe that most of the work that needs to be done is above us as well.
Yes, Karen. Oh, you're muted.
Charity, I have a question, because you brought up really important issues, that there's so many things that need to change in order so that we can make things better. But what do you see as as the way to change? What do you see as your power, whether it be organizations or whether it be voting or whether it be doing it in government or through other means? What do you see as the way to get empowered so that things do change? Where do you and your friends see that as happens? Where?
I do think that like the social media pushing, spreading information around, because I feel like a lot of these events and things that occur, a lot of people wouldn't know about if it wasn't circulated that way. And from there, I've seen like protests and people bringing things up to their local officials that I believe wouldn't have had as much traction if it wasn't spread around. So I think it goes both ways. Like I mentioned earlier, it is kind of draining to continuously see these like acts of violence on social media, but also with that being spread around, it helps to I guess like garner support. Okay, so what can we do about this? And I've seen different organizations come together to, whether it be protest or lobby. So doing what we can from the aspect of like protesting, getting the word out, coming together as a collective to see if there's anything in our control to do, and bringing that to the attention of officials as well, local officials and government officials as well.
And I was going to ask, given how much talk there is on social media, as we keep mentioning, my next question is, how ignorant do you still think, or knowledgeable do you think your peers are in terms of institutionalized racism? And also, do you blame them for how, if they are ignorant, for the fact that they are?
Yeah, I could answer this. I think, well, my response is two parts. One, I do believe my peers are somewhat ignorant in regards to this. One, that stems, I blame myself, one, because I don't usually, educate them or don't tend to call them out on these type of things. And again, that's on me. Just not, calling people out or calling my peers out when they say certain terms or when they, have a certain response to certain incidents on the news. And like I said, that's on me. And two, one thing I've noticed is people who are not Black tend to see these accidents and, and these things that happen in the media and the news as trends. We typically start protesting for like a few weeks or whatnot. We repost, but then as soon as the hype dies down, it's back to, okay, just playfully saying the N-word. It's back to playfully using derogatory terms, or playfully using stereotypes XYZ. So I think that's where it stems from. But yeah, that's my take on that.
I think very few of them are more knowledgeable. A lot more of them are still ignorant to the fact, as Victor just said. I remember I was scrolling through Instagram one day and one of my classmates posted on their story saying that it was right after Dante Wright was murdered. They said these people are only dying because they don't know how to follow the law, and it has nothing to do with their skin color. And I was going back and forth with her because she was just completely ignoring the facts and the evidence that I was providing. And she kept saying that, hey, if these people knew how to abide by the law and be upstanding citizens, and they had a past of all these bad decisions, this is what led to their demise. And I was like, I know so many people, including yourself, that have made decisions like that. And I kind of threw it right back in her face, like, you say this person did drugs, but didn't you say that you used to smoke marijuana the same not too long ago too? And it's just like they always want to pin it on something if it has nothing to do with them, or if it has nothing, they'll always try and push different narrative than the truth, and it's almost to the point where they're trying to make up whatever they possibly could just to make it not sound like it has something to do with race. So I feel like a lot of them do want to remain ignorant to the fact.
Yeah, Reggie?
Reggie.
Yes, for those who don't know, I head up the bias crime unit for Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. This year has been off the wall. We've had 84 incidents, bias-related incidents that have taken place. And I covered the 25 municipalities that are in Middlesex County. Over a third of the cases are coming from our school system. And I'm talking about K through high school. It's amazing to see the volume of cases that are coming from there. Over the last couple of years, the cases have increased, not decreased. And I definitely equate that to the amount of social media that is out there. However, out of all the municipalities, my number one, I don't want to call them client, but where most of my cases come from, believe it or not, are from Rutgers. Rutgers is easily a fourth of my cases.
Wow.
And it's not getting any easier. And some of the bias incidents that I cover have to do with criminal mischief. You see names written or graffiti, verbal harassment. You get terroristic threats. You get a number of those different things. The number one targeted group out of all of my numbers that have come in is still the African American community. It's easy for them to be number one because you can see when you walk down the street who's African American and who's not. And it also goes by perception too, because you could be white and have a nice tan and be considered, identified as such mistakenly, and still end up in the head count. The Jewish community, as far as religion is concerned, is still number one, and we're seeing an increase of the LGBTQ community being targeted. So we have our hands, we have a lot of work to do, and it just seems that historically, the United States has always loved having imaginary enemies. I call it imaginary enemies. That means, when you have people claim that certain groups take their jobs away or lives in their neighborhoods and can't figure out why they want to move to their neighborhoods, redlining, all that type of stuff. But, we're not, the cases are off the wall, and, and will continue to be so.
Thanks, Reggie. So
If I could,
yeah.
My bad. I just have a question for those on this panel who are I don't want to use the term of the older generation, but I just have a question for you guys. What's something you would like to see from us young folks moving forward in regards to the situation? What's something that we could do, or some type of change you would like to see from us?
Okay, go ahead. I'll chip in on that one. The first thing would be for the rappers to stop using that word and promoting it, even for profit and so on. That time, that opens the door for those white kids that you were talking about to hide behind that one beer that they had and use that same word that they heard the rappers say.
Right.
Matter of fact, they're rapping it and using the same word themselves now.
Right.
Okay, so that would be a good place trying to educate our that's a younger generation than me. The next generation up that's using those words to even pull themselves up by their economic bootstraps. Economics is probably going to be the only way you're going to be able to deal with this. It costs money, you know. I hear your guys' story, and it just reminds me. I grew up in the South, so it's just a recreation of what I experienced growing up. Even the killings, even they were, they might not have been like this, but death is death. There was hangings, those types of things, the KKK. You're exposed to all of this stuff, and your parents try to keep you shielded away from those types of things. So just the same as today, you guys are trying to figure it out, and it's still there. You mentioned all of the key things: institutional racism. I used to have to pass by a little black statue out on the lawn, just there, okay, for no reason, but I had to pass it every day, and we knew that, you know, it meant something. Maybe he was guarding the white people. You know, there's a big white house back there. But you know, those things, statues, they're all institutional, and they're tied to something historical. You know, it could be a Confederate soldier, it could be a terrible landowner or whatever. But they're in monuments, all of that type of stuff, and all that stuff is important. That's why I have so much hope for the young generation that's out there right now, the generation just above you guys, led by a lot of educated women who are pushing this issue and holding a lot of people accountable. So there's plenty of hope. And I think you guys are on the right track in the way you come and attend a meeting like this, and then share those ideas and things like that. That's going to make you stronger.
Well, I want to share something. Number one, I'm very, very impressed with a lot of things that you have said. But the one thing, and I've been taking notes, which I'll come back to at the end. But the one thing that I would love is that the barriers that, you know, as you mentioned, I'm Caribbean, I'm African, I'm this, that, or the other, that the Black community, the African diaspora of people that make up our community operate as one, and there should not be these divisions. So whatever you can do to promote unity in our community, I think is great. And I know that Victor at Rutgers, and by the way, Divon is going to Rutgers, so welcome him. And he's transferring from community college, so he'll need support. You know, alliances, creating alliances and bridges. We're all in this together. I think that's important.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to say that there is hope. I mean, I do go around, help set up human relations commissions, and these commissions are located at the various counties levels and also at local levels. So municipalities have these community gatherings, and they discuss a lot of the issues that take place in their community. And I found them extremely helpful, not only to identify certain trends, but to come up with answers to deal with those various trends. So, you know, if you have the time, you may want to call City Hall, find out if they have a human relations commission, and then this is something that you may want to, when you have the time, to come visit and share your experiences. I know, Divon, you went to the one in South Plainfield, correct? And so there's one in Metuchen, there's one in New Brunswick, so they're out there.
I thank each and every one of you for your ideas. They was great ideas and very broad-minded, and especially looking at the fact of institutional racism, because when I was a teenager, I wasn't aware of institutional racism. But as I become older, now I see and understand it more than I did then. So that's why I say kudos to you guys, because you recognize it. And I think the good thing too is that social media gives you an advantage, because you can see more of what is going on, from where, from whom, and so forth and so on, and can react to it depending on your choice of reaction to the event, better than prior to social media. I think that's the other thing that gives us, that gives you guys the advantage of being able to speak to it, to step to it, and to try to show the perpetrator that that was not the right way, this is the right way. So, and the other thing too is, always reach out to us, because we're here for you.
Thank you, Mary. I wanted to ask, actually, do you think there's a way to avoid burnout and still educate others like the way we do through social media? Or is that impossible?
That's a good question. Is it possible to avoid burnout? Some of the time, burnout happened before you really realize that you have gotten to that point. So being aware of it, I think, is the most important thing, knowing that it can happen. But I think staying in touch with someone else, speaking on it, talking about how you're feeling at that particular time, and asking for help, might be a way that you can, I'm not going to say alleviate it, but at least make it less stressful.
Yeah.
I like what Mary just said. I mean, Ikea, I'm naturally just burnt out because I'm always, but I feel like it definitely, there's a lot of people that are, there's people that definitely don't want to be reached. So they'll definitely, like I said, there's that ignorance out there. However, Mary touching on the fact, saying that just being able to stay in touch with that person, or just being able to stay in touch with anyone for so long, eventually the way you think, the way you act is going to rub off on them. And they're going to start to say, oh, Divon lives his life this way, that way, and this is how he goes about when something like this occurs. So eventually, over time, you can only hope that that person begins to understand the way you react, the way you move, the way you go day by day. And they'll start to see, maybe before when I said they were being very complacent on their former thoughts and what they used to think, maybe they're going to say, oh, let me begin to understand how Divon is, especially if he doesn't leave me alone and he wants to stay in touch. Let me embrace him and start to really think how he thinks. So maybe if you continue to stay in touch with that person, as long as they're like, please leave me alone, as long as they're not sick and tired of you, they're going to start embracing you to that certain point.
I think definitely what I've learned is to operate with discernment. There's certain people that will kind of reach out and be like, oh, I want to be more educated on this topic. And I feel like a lot of the times as Black people, we can be burdened by having to like feeling like we have to educate when, not to be blunt, but there's so many resources out there, like Google is free. You don't need to take on, especially if you're trying to process your own emotions about how you're feeling, and then having to educate, and it goes back, the history goes back and back and back. There's no way you can possibly educate somebody about the entire history of racism. So operating with discernment, knowing, okay, like I had an encounter where a white classmate that I hadn't spoken to for a long time, she reached out and she said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, what can I do? And I understood it, but also that discernment, just knowing her actions and the way she was acting on social media, you can tell when somebody's being performative and if somebody's genuinely wants to learn. And I also feel like with discernment, that there's people that like willful ignorance. They don't want to learn and they're trying to drive their own narrative. So you need to discern, okay, is this worth me actually spending my time to educate this person? But I think on top of the pandemic, and like the pandemic on top of everything made it a lot to process during the lockdown. So I actually needed to take a break from social media. And I feel like we shouldn't feel guilty about taking time to protect ourselves, because I know like a big thing, protect Black people, protect Black lives. So as a Black person, protect yourself, protect your own mental health. If it's getting too much for you to bear, it's okay to take that time to step away. Like if you did want to educate somebody, there's always that time, that news story will always be there. So again, discernment, and then knowing yourself, knowing your triggers. It's okay to take a break. You're not Superwoman, you're not Superman. You do what you can, but also like take care of yourself too.
That's so, so important. Thank you, Charity.
I just wanted to add that, and Charity basically hit it right on the spot, is that focus on it. You can't cover the whole spectrum of this racism and things like that, but you may hear things coming from all different types of directions. You work on the areas that won't cause you burnout. I mean, you see enough progress, or you see enough of your work that's materializing in a way that you would like to do, so you can come back day after day and you can do what you have to do. And think about vacation. You got to chip in. You got to think about yourself. You got to take a break somewhere along the way, and just go out and let your hair down, because this stuff is still here and it's not going away.
No time soon.
Right. It's going to be around for a while. So this is a good start right here. Find a lane where you're comfortable with, and then you can hang out there for a while.
When I have the opportunity, I'd like to ask a question about the environment of each of these colleges. So Charity is from an HBCU. Divon just finished our local community college, and then we have Rutgers. And so I'm just wondering what they found on campus, what their experiences were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to let you, Kia, you can continue to answer questions.
I mean, that was a great question. I mean, I did have one, but please feel free to answer that first, because that's important. Whoever
So,
wants to.
so I'm going to throw it to Cayla. Cayla, what was your experience as a Black student at Rutgers University in New Brunswick? What has it been like for these past 3 years?
Okay, so for me, honestly, I have not experienced that much racism simply because Rutgers is it isn't a diverse school, but the Black community is so like tight, like knit. So like all my friends are within that Black community. Like everything that I would do would be within that Black community. So I don't think that I've really had any, you know, serious incidents. Mostly just, I guess, teachers who would be like acting a certain way towards me because I would be like the one and only person. Like not only was I Black in the room, but I was also a woman in the room. So they would look at me differently, like kind of like, why are you here? Like you probably won't do good in this class. Maybe you should drop this class. And then I end up doing really well in the class. And then they're like, oh, okay. They have nothing to say. So I guess that's really the only time.
Well, you know, that's kind of a very critical and important issue. One of our nieces actually told us, and she was literally in tears when the professor said, why are you here? You know, and she had already graduated. She was in a PhD program. Why are you here? And not wanting to give her the respect, the time to help her. So thanks for sharing that. Who else would like to respond to that? What it's like to be a student at your university?
I would say at Howard, I didn't experience racism, but just the fact of going to an HBCU with certain people, first they think I'm saying Harvard. So I'm like, no, it's not Harvard, it's Howard. And they're like, oh, well, that's a good school too. And I felt like kind of having to prove my intelligence because there's this notion that at an HBCU that you're getting a watered down version of academics, which is not true at all. And so while I didn't experience racism at Howard, you could just see the effects of that institutionalized racism when you go just driving around DC. Like we're very close to the White House and just seeing, like, I'm telling you about the apartments, the value of the properties there. And then you keep driving down, maybe you go to Southeast DC, where like the medium income is so below the poverty level. So just seeing that around us and the effects of it was very apparent. And like a lot of my friends, and at Howard, one of the top majors was political science, and a lot of people were driven to do something about it, interning on the Hill, making their own like organizations to combat that, to work on that locally. But thankfully, like within the school, I could say that I haven't experienced racism.
Thank you, Charity.
I'll chime in next. I mean, with Middlesex is great because it's in Edison. I think most of the student population is actually Southeast Asian, because Middlesex County is so diverse. And I actually took an African American Studies history class there, which I thought was really interesting because it opened my eyes. I mean, it was a very different course, and it really, a lot of the things that I learned in that class, I was like, how come I didn't learn this in high school? How come I didn't learn this ahead of time? I mean, and how come only I'm learning this? Like, I feel like everyone needs to know about the information that I learned from that course. But as far as Middlesex, I thought Middlesex was great, and because it was so diverse, it was very inclusive to everyone and allowed, I would go on campus events, they would have specific African cultural events, and it would be out of Black History Month. Like I would be like, wow, they're extending a whole school year for our kind of events. Opposed to, Brianne knows I actually went to the University of Scranton first, and I used to think coming out of South Plainfield, I was one of the lone troopers. I was a Black American. But when I went to the University of Scranton, I was really a lone trooper. And to be honest, out there, Scranton isn't no Los Angeles or New York City. It's not nice. And to be honest, I felt like coming from a great area that I coming from a great area where I was born and raised, I felt like going out there, I was less than trash. So I would be able to, being the sole Black person in like every class, walking down the street, I was able to make Black friends out there. And it was funny because we all had the same dream. Like one of my friends that I still stay in touch from the University of Scranton, he was like, man, we should have went to LSU. And LSU was my #1 school coming out of high school, which I only didn't go because money ain't everything in the world. But it's like we had that kind of bond. And without that, I probably would have left in the first week, honestly. But I survived the one semester that I was there. But no, Scranton was a culture shock. I mean, you went out there and you were like, wow, people live like this. And they're satisfied living like this. So it was, and I always say, like, those experiences definitely prepared me for the future. So I survived it, and like Brianne said, I'm here now to tell my testimony. So yeah.
Yeah, I could go last. Just real quick, Divon, excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, bro, but you mentioned how at South Plainfield you felt like a loner, right? Like a lone trooper. That's interesting you brought that up because a close friend of mine are actually working with a teacher at South Plainfield to make a mentorship program for students just like you. So we could definitely connect afterwards and have you on board for that. So
Absolutely.
That's dope. Thank you for sharing that. But Cayla, correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, Rutgers has a 7 or 8. So Black students make up 7 or 8% of the population at Rutgers. Is that correct? Right? Okay, she's shaking her head. That's correct. So that being true, we're a very tight community, so we pretty much know one another. Everyone knows each other, which is good, but at the same time, kind of has this not so good. Cayla knows, but yeah. So we pretty much know each other, which is a great thing. Personally, I haven't had any bad experiences in terms of racism at Rutgers, but I will say some close friends have had some pretty bad encounters with RUPD. Which probably contributes to the statistics that Mr. Johnson read earlier. The only thing I've really experienced is being a STEM major. It can be very intimidating, considering that Rutgers is predominantly white and Indian population, especially in the STEM program. So it can be pretty intimidating, walking into computer science class, sitting in a classroom full of people who've been coding since they were like 3, and you're literally just starting this. It can be very intimidating. And it's sad that they don't really expect you to excel well in that class, but that just means that you have to push harder. And I could say with humility, I have pushed harder and I have come to the top in those classes. So that's really the only type of things I've experienced at Rutgers. But overall, it's a pretty great school. Really can't complain. Divon, you're gonna have a great time at Rutgers. We're definitely gonna welcome you with open arms. Charity, you can come in anytime you want. You know what I'm saying? If you ever want to visit for the weekends, we got you. So that's just my experience.
I have to say this is interesting to listen to, just as like a Rutgers 2017 grad, because for me, I did not know where the Black people were at. I like all of my friends were Asian or white.
We need to work on that. That's what we're trying to work on. We're trying to find all the Black people bring together, but continue.
Yeah, no. And I ended up doing that like my late junior into senior year. I ended up starting to go to BSU meetings, right? And so I finally was like, oh, okay, here's where they were hiding, Bush. But it's interesting because pretty much all of my friends from Rutgers, and they don't do this anymore, but at the time they were very, immature or something. I was also going, obviously, during, Trump's presidency. That, like, the the beginning of it. And so people were more bold on campus, and there were definitely people out there wearing their, like, you know, Make America Great Again hats, their MAGA hats, and they were not scared to show it. But yeah, a lot of my friends actually would use the N-word. So I have to say that for me, it's interesting because it's like, usually nothing directly happened racist towards me technically, but because my friends were the way they were, and because I felt so disconnected from the Black community at Rutgers, it did feel like, you know, maybe I should have gone to, I don't know, Howard or any other HBCU. You know, so anyway, that's just my input. But you're gonna have a great time, Divon. Just find the people, find them.
No, yeah, definitely based off of what you said. My freshman year, I had one white friend who, her name was Antonia. She's still my friend now, but she moved to Greece. But still, like, I think that if I didn't go to meetings and like meet new people, by the way, Victor, I think I know you from BMC. We like co-sponsor events. Anyways, so yeah, if I hadn't joined like WIZO, which is like the West Indian Student Organization, or like the NAACP, I think I would have no like Black friends. I think I would only have white friends. And, you know, obviously it's a great thing to have like both sides of the spectrum, you know, but I think connecting with people more like you is definitely important, because in high school, I definitely had like more white friends, which is why I didn't really know about that whole like racism thing that was going on. But then when I came to college, it was like a whole eye opener for me. So yeah.
Doris, I see you. You raised your hand. Go ahead.
I have, I think, two questions. I'm late because I went to another meeting before I came here. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but you're talking about Rutgers, New Brunswick. Do you also reach out to Rutgers in Newark and Rutgers in Camden to see about the Black students there? Is there any sort of correlation between the three different campuses? And how do you count Rutgers, New Brunswick with Livingston?
Yeah, I could start by saying there are definitely some connections with the NAACP chapter at Rutgers, New Brunswick, in connection with the NAACP chapter in Newark. I am not a member of the Rutgers chapter, but a few close friends are members, and they typically not co-sponsor, but they typically have members from the Newark chapter come over and attend meetings or events in for the New Brunswick chapter, and vice versa. We also have, I know Rutgers Newark has very similar organizations like us. Like at New Brunswick, we have the Black Men's Collective, as Cayla mentioned earlier, which I'm a member of. I'm pretty sure Rutgers New Brunswick has a similar organization of that matter. We've only had 1 or 2 events where we've had members, you know, come over and, you know, our members go over, but we definitely need to keep that going. And I think that's just about it. It's something we definitely need to, you know, work on moving forward. And now that you brought it up, it's definitely something that I can implement for my organization moving into the fall semester. And excuse me, I completely forgot the second part of your question. Could you repeat that?
Hopefully I remember too. You talked about Rutgers, New Brunswick. I know where that is. I know where
Right.
Livingston is also. Do you consider Livingston part of your group also?
Group in the sense of
Well,
Blacks being,
because because okay, I'm a senior auditor, okay?
right.
Old, okay? And I've taken several classes in Livingston. I've also taken some at Cook College.
Right.
When I go to Livingston, it seems to be a larger minority population than I do at Cook, or I don't do the Douglas part, but the Cook part. I was wondering if you ever get together. Is that considered 2 separate things? Because the way you're talking, I don't understand how you're not seeing Black students if you're going to Livingston, or if they're coming to you.
Yeah, no, they're all inclusive together. So it's 4 campuses that currently make up the whole university. That includes the Livingston campus. I will say that some campuses are specifically for certain majors. Like you'll tend to see more STEM majors in the Bush campus. You tend to see more liberal arts majors in the Cook campus. But we all come together to make up the university, which is Rutgers. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yes. I have another question too. I have lots of questions. When you're in high school, maybe junior high school, Rutgers has this program for students who are in Newark, New Brunswick, and Camden. They go to these special classes, I think on the weekends, if not during class time, to prepare them for college. Are those a different kind of STEM people than what you're talking about as a freshman in college? Because they're almost guaranteed admission by going to this this high school program. Were any of you in that program?
That's interesting you brought that up, because I wasn't a part of that program, but my org we mentor students at a local charter school in Plainfield, and they were actually a part of that program. I believe it's the same program you're speaking of, where they currently take, well, everything's remote now, but they take remote classes at Rutgers and certain community colleges to receive college credits. So they have college credits coming into college, which is a great idea. So the classes that they take, some of them are STEM, not all of them, but for the ones who do take those STEM classes, they do come into college with those credits.
Okay, and my last question for this. I don't have money, okay, so I can't give, but I did give last year like $40 to the food pantry. I don't mean to be discriminatory, but is there a certain place that Black students can go to the food pantry that I know I'm giving it to them as opposed to the enlarged student population?
I
You
think
got that,
I can
Cayla.
answer on this. Yeah. So I am actually was last year part of the Rutgers NAACP, and we did a couple events, one or two, where we had like coats, for example, and we got coats from like students and whatever. We picked them up and we donated them to like a place in Newark.
No, this is different. But when
you're talking about the food pantry, right?
Food pantry, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
I stopped giving to my little $40, whatever it was because if you give less than, let's say, $200, 10% goes to the foundation, and then the rest of it goes to the food pantry. If you give over a certain amount, they take a smaller amount. And when I read that upset me. Why was I helping the foundation with their things as opposed to giving food money to students who need the food money? So I was wondering, was there some sort of place on campus, whether Livingston or New Brunswick, where there are minority students, and I hate to say this, but Black students who need to have food also that I could give to?
Oh, you're talking about the students who need food?
Yes.
Okay, no, I don't know, sorry.
Because there's a food pantry, I think it's on Front Street, I forget the name of the address, but there is a food pantry on New Brunswick campus, but I'm not sure if it's how you go there. Because I don't want to give them money again, because I'm not supporting the foundation. I'm sorry.
You know what I'm gonna do? Go ahead, Cayla.
By any chance, are you talking about Elijah's Promise?
No.
No? Okay.
No. If we have these drives twice a year, whatever Rutgers does, and they call you to say, would you give money to Rutgers University? And it goes through Rutgers's foundation. And whatever money you give to the foundation, 10% or a percentage of that goes to the foundation, and the balance goes to scholarships, to the food pantry, to whatever you want to give it to. And I thought the whole thing was going to the food pantry, but no, it doesn't work that way.
Doris, I remember when at the start of the pandemic and everything shut down, and I remember that there was a building, I forget the name of the street, is where all the fraternities were, and they were just having people bring food for the students there. It was just directly bringing cans and packages of food to be distributed to the students. I don't know if that's still happening, but I remember that at the start of the pandemic, somebody had that going.
But even before that, when I was a senior auditor,
yeah,
I used to get the little newsletters at the cafeteria. I like reading, okay? And it talked about the food pantry, both editions, the spring and the fall, where they were saying, and I know from other schools, not everybody who goes to Rutgers can afford to eat, okay?
Yeah.
Not everybody has money. And so they were saying that students were having problems. So I said, oh, well, I'll give X amount of money to the food pantry. And the kids could go to there at certain times of the day, certain days of the week, and they had cans. It's like it's a food pantry. You can get soups, you can get spaghetti, whatever they had there, they would give to the students. And it's like I said, I didn't know which students were going there.
Right.
Just real quick, Ms. Chamberlain, what I can do is if you could just drop your email in the chat. I'll definitely do some research for you, try to figure out if that program is still active. And once I get any type of information, I'll shoot you an email. Does that work?
Yes, it will. Thank you very much.
Awesome. No problem.
I know we're a bit over time. I just had one last question that I've been holding for like 30 minutes, if you guys don't mind. Charity, you were talking about discernment, and so recently I've been thinking about where to draw the line with people in terms of how many chances do you give someone that's just not acting right, in terms of, it's like you give them information. It's like, don't do this. This is wrong. This offends people. And then they do it again. And so my question to everyone, of course, is how do you know when to draw the line? Because I guess I've been in my head comparing it to cancel culture, in the sense that it's like you can't take it too far, right? Because it's like then you can cancel everyone. So it's like where's that line? Where does it cross?
I think a lot of it is rooted in what their actual belief is. So if it's somebody saying, okay, why can I not say the N-word? I'm still kind of like iffy about, but like other things where they're saying they're trying to question why a Black American shouldn't be treated like a human being. I feel like that's where I draw the line. I can't convince you of an African American's humanity. That's a character flaw beyond repair, I feel like. But if it's okay, why is the N-word offensive? Okay, I can kind of understand, but I feel like a lot of it kind of depends on your relationship with that person and kind of their actions. But things like convincing somebody, trying to educate somebody about why someone deserves rights or why they should be treated as a human being, I feel like there's nothing I can give you but prayer at that point. So I can't teach you that. That's not something that could be educated about. And yeah, I feel like I think we all need to like trust our gut instinct a bit more. Because there's certain people who was like, I feel a little iffy about it. And then you continue the conversation and it's like, okay, you had no intent of being educated. You just wanted to get this point across. So yeah, that gut feeling is key, and really looking at the root of what they're trying to be educated about.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Does anybody have anything else?
Just know that when you're born, we all come in this world the same, and everybody have to get smacked, black, white, all of them, okay? So you're equal at that point. And then 70 years, 80 years later, 90 years later, we go down and we are equal again. So what happens to us in between, we have a lot to do with that. So we have to fight for it all the way through and you are a human being and you don't have to explain that, So I enjoyed hearing you guys, the track that you're on, and I wish you all well.
Yeah, kudos to all of you. Did an outstanding job of bringing a lot of, these are tough issues, and I appreciated your honesty and hearing what's going on. And we do know that all of these economics, education, healthcare, all of this is intertwined, and as we talk about it, institutionalized. But hopefully going forward, things can be better for all of us. So I wish each and every one of you the best. And I think that we should share the emails so that you all, I believe in networking, so each of you can stay in touch. I hope each of you can stay in touch. Got a lot to share, and that power. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I just have two quick announcements for anyone who wants to know. Governor Murphy is having a virtual town hall. That's going to be Wednesday, June 16th. So that's next week, Wednesday at 4 p.m. And I'm going to send the registration link in the chat. Sorry, the link got a little messed up. And then otherwise, we're of course having our Juneteenth celebration on Juneteenth, Saturday. It's going to be virtual. Divon, my co-host, will of course be there. Yeah, it'll be like performances, song, dance, some people just speaking. It's going to be great. I'm really excited about it. It's coming together well. We're having Carissa Lawson, who's the News 12 anchor, come and MC part of it for us. So that's really exciting too. Let's see. And there's another Juneteenth event starting off June 17th, 3 p.m. That one's in person at the Monument Square in New Brunswick. And all this information can really be found on our different social media pages. They're all funded by the Middlesex County Office of Arts and History. And so, yeah, just in case anyone wants to know, wants to come by, or, wants to join our Zoom. Yeah. Anyway, again, thank you so much to everyone for coming here and for being open and honest and vulnerable, because that is always, that is always the best conversation. So really, thank you. And I see two people raise their hand. Divon, do you want to go first?
I saw Doris first. I'll let Ms. Chamberlain talk first.
Did you get the dates for the national NACP meeting? I think it's in July.
I didn't see an email. Reggie, was there an email that came out?
Only because there's a person.
I did send that to you. That was in the grouping. Okay. But if it's not, I'll make sure Doris, you'll get that. Yes, it is July. It's usually the week after the 4th of July. So I'll make sure you get that.
Because I think it's the gotta get the names. It's East Orange, Montclair. Do you